Let's start with the South. Alabama, the number 1 overall seed here. No surprise there. But guys, my gut feel looking at this bracket, and I said this to Cart yesterday, I kind of predicted this. There's like 4 teams in this region that I wanted to pick as Final Four teams. Like I had stars next to their names all season long. Like, oh, if they get the right draw, they're going to my Final Four. They're all in the same region, and I hate that. Sweeney, what do you make of the South?
So I think the top of the South and the bottom of the South are very, very different. I think the top of the South sets up as well as you could possibly imagine for Alabama, right? You have, in my opinion, the worst or most vulnerable number 4 seed in Virginia, a team that has really struggled down the stretch, doesn't easily generate offense. You have San Diego State as the 5 seed, who, again, really good team, really disciplined, really good defensively, but another team that struggles to generate consistent offense and also struggles against teams you can't press and turn over. And the 8-9 game, like I think Maryland and West Virginia were teams on that line you wanted to play, at least in comparison to Memphis, at least in comparison to Arkansas and Illinois and teams like that. So to me, like I love Alabama's draw to the Elite 8, but that Elite 8 matchup, whether it's with an Arizona team that just comes off a Pac-12 championship, whether that's with a Baylor team that has 3 of the best guards in college basketball, whether it's a sleeper like Creighton, that one of the best starting 5s in the country, maybe even Mizzou. Like Mizzou has played really well here in SEC tournament play. Their offense is dynamic and explosive. They've won some high-level games. Like I think the bottom half is really going to be a war, and I think Alabama is going to cruise to that point. And that's why I think Bama gets to the Final Four in the end, is that I think their path to getting to a kind of 50-50 game is a little bit easier than it would be for other teams in other regions.
What do you think, Hart?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all on board with what Sweeney said as far as Bama. I really think they're going to absolutely like cakewalk through those first 2 games. The Maryland team does not scare me outside of the Xfinity Center, like we've talked about, basically all year. West Virginia, I think they get a little bit of a bump because they had to go through the grind of the Big 12. And yes, they did win some games, but that's not necessarily a team that I fear. In March, I fear Bob Huggins, but I'm not really fearing West Virginia and the Fighting Eric Stevenson. So, yeah, I really think Bama has honestly a cakewalk to the Elite 8 at minimum. And I like them to come out of this side of the bracket. I think that Bama-Arizona matchup is kind of what I would want if I could fill out my bracket that way. But, I mean, like Sweeney said, as you're going through this, I mean, Virginia being the 4 seed, like that's not something that scares me. Creighton, I think, is a team that scares me as a 6 seed just because they do have the potential to be good. Their ceiling is extremely high. But as we saw this year, they had some games where they slipped up. And, I mean, you keep going down this. I mean, everyone's kind of getting out on Baylor a little bit. I'm not necessarily jumping off the Baylor train. I'd actually like to get your guys' opinion on that. I'm personally not jumping off the Baylor train just because of those guards and what they can do in March. But they kind of, crawled across the finish line at the end. So I'd like to know how y'all feel about Baylor, honestly.
I want to jump in on Baylor quickly because what I alluded to at the top, there's 4 teams in here I had stars next to. I wanted to pick them, or at least would think about picking them to the Final Four, depending on the draw. Those 4 teams are Alabama, Arizona, Baylor, and Creighton. Like I knew Creighton was going to fall. I thought maybe like a 6 seed or even a 7 seed. That's what the bracketology guys told me this afternoon. They end up on the 6 line. Like Creighton and Baylor having to play before either of them are in the Sweet 16 is insanity to me. Like I just hate that for both of them. I think on their best day, both these teams are closer to top 10 teams in the country. That's just a slaughterhouse of a game. Creighton has to get through NC State first to me. Like I love that backcourt. And we saw what they did in the ACC tournament in the first game against Virginia Tech. Like if they just go nuclear, I don't know that there's much a team can do. But it scares me because I still could talk myself into Creighton, even given this draw. But comparing it to like how you guys are saying with Alabama, it's like, pretty much 0 tests for them until they get to the Elite 8. Like Creighton, in my opinion, would really have to win 3 games that they're either, pick'ems or underdogs in just to get to a Final Four and get out of this region. It seems crazy to me. And Baylor's kind of in a similar boat. Like if you're calling that Creighton game a potential toss-up, then you get Arizona in the Sweet 16 just to get to Alabama. Like that alone is enough for me to talk myself out of Baylor, even if I want to talk myself into them, like you said, Cart.
My issue with Baylor, Greg, is the defense has not gotten better. Like,
Yeah.
I think the hope and the vision when you're sitting here on February 1st was, man, they get Jonathan Tchamwa back. They kind of understand their system a little bit better. They ditched the Ojian Wuna minutes, who's a really good young player, but he's not ready defensively to kind of deal with the no middle. Okay, maybe we've got something. And instead it's gotten worse. Like, they got fried consecutive games by an Iowa State team that's barely in the top 100 in KenPom offense. Like, they cannot guard the rim. And look, I think Baylor's guards can win them any game, but like, I think we have to talk about the possibility that Baylor goes home on day one, because Baylor's playing a very good Santa Barbara team that most years gets a 12 or a 13 seed. That's a team that's supremely talented. It's a team that very nearly won an NCAA tournament game 2 years ago when they were in the field. If you remember, they played Creighton. I think they lost in the final seconds. It was like a 1-point game. And the strength of UC Santa Barbara is its guards relentlessly driving to the rim. Tell me that doesn't scare you if you're a Baylor fan. Like, AJ Mitchell and Josh Pierre-Louis, like, those dudes get downhill all day. And they have a big guy in Andre Kelly who played 3 years at Cal. He was an all-conference level guy in the Pac-12, 13-8. Like, he winds up at Santa Barbara because he wanted to win. And he got the biggest role he probably could have gotten anywhere. But this is not a pushover Santa Barbara team. Joe Pasternak has built a really talented roster. They're athletic. Mitchell's a really good defender, which I think will help them dealing with the 3 Baylor guards. I'm not saying they'll win the game, but like, that is not an easy game. So for a Baylor team that, you know, woke up probably on Friday or Saturday thinking they're a 2 seed, thinking they're going to, you know, cruise through round 1, then maybe play like Northwestern in the second round, all of a sudden now their path is, we got to go play a really good mid-major round 1. We got to play Creighton, potentially round 2, top 20 team with elite talent. Then we got to play Arizona potentially in the Sweet 16. Then we got to play Alabama in the Elite 8. And that's just to get to a Final Four. I think Baylor has a case to have the hardest path of any team in the country, at least among the elite teams in college basketball.
Yeah, just a killer draw for Baylor for sure. So Arizona, Cart and I have a love affair with this team. We watched them last night clinch the Pac-12 championship out in Chicago. All 3 of us were riding Baylor responsibly, of course, at Bet Rivers. But do you buy that they could actually get through Alabama? That's my question. Not just, are they Final Four good? Are they national title good? Like, they have to get through Alabama to get there. And we think Alabama's just penciled in automatically in the Elite 8. What do you make of that matchup, Cart?
You know, if they do get to that match, I think that as a, you know, talent wise, I think that people, when they talk about Bama, they have, of course, they got Brandon Miller, who's the NBA talent. They got Bediako. They got the guards and Sears. And Jellyfam JQ is actually not doing things to hurt his team right now. But you cannot fall for the trap completely, because sometimes Jelly JQ, when it comes to March, he can come back and bite you. But all in all, this Arizona team is a team that can really match up talent-wise with this team. You have the big man in Ballo who can kind of offset Bediako. They got the rim protection. Tubelis is going to be a mismatch for most teams that, you know, Arizona do play. But Alabama is the one team that could actually match up with them talent-wise. I'm not sure who would come on top of that game, just because they do kind of play that similar upstart, you know, fast tempo type game. But I can't shake my love for this Zona team. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's Kerr Kriisa in the headband. I don't know if it's the addition of Courtney Ramey, but like, I think there's one team that can knock off Bama. It will be Arizona.
What do you think, Sweeney?
I think they have a chance to win that game. I think what I'm most curious about kind of matchup wise is, you know, Bediako and Noah Clowney have done such a good job all season of neutralizing the rim for opponents, right? Like the Bama team 2 years ago that made the was it the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8? That was the Sweet 16 that they lost to UCLA in, because then UCLA played Michigan. That Sweet 16 Bama team was good defensively, but they were good defensively because of one guy, Herb Jones. This year's Alabama team is good defensively because they're physical and athletic and long. And, oh, by the way, they have 2 like monster drop coverage bigs. And I'm really curious to see how they would handle 2 guys as physical as Ballo and Tubelis. Like, I think Bediako probably comes out on top defensively in that matchup, because he really comes out on top every matchup defensively. And I think that probably tilts things in Bama's favor. But I just think at the end of the day, like Arizona has risen its game when it's played against top competition. Like this is a team that will sleepwalk through some games, right? Like they gave up 88 to Stanford. They lost at home to Washington State. They lost to Utah. Like Arizona has been inconsistent at times, but when the lights have been brightest, when they have needed to play really well, for the most part, they have brought it. And I think you get into a Elite Eight type spot, you're going to get their best shot. And I think Alabama is the most complete team in this field. They're the best chance to win a national title, in my opinion. But at the same time, getting through Arizona will not be easy, especially when Arizona plays this game.
One last thing about Arizona, too, that I do love. I just want to throw it out there really quick. I love picking teams to win national titles and to make runs that have elite glue guys. Like you think to that Baylor team a couple years ago, like Mark Vital was just an elite glue guy. Pell Larson is one of the most elite glue guys in the country. Like he's honestly almost too good to be a glue guy. Like I think he's a guy who comes back next year and he could be like an All-American level type talent. I think he's that good. But for this team and kind of the role he plays, he's just like the ultimate glue guy. And I mean, I think that separates them from some of the other elite teams in the country.
I did not have Pell Larson, Mark Vital comparisons on my bingo card.
I'm just saying glue guys. You know, I love a good glue guy. I truly do.
You do love a good glue guy for sure. I just think they're a bright lights team, Sweeney. And I'm not going to spoil my major predictions later in the show, but Arizona is in my Final Four. They're my pick to win this region. I think they'd be comfortable in a game against Alabama. Like I think what makes playing Alabama so difficult, other than the fact that they're so talented and they have Brandon Miller, is the fact that they play with such pace. They play such a one of a kind style of offensive basketball. And can't you squint and see Arizona loving that game? Like just up and down the court, a bunch of threes flying. Like I think Arizona's best in that style. I don't think they're going to be spooked by that. And look, just playing the numbers, I don't want to be the guy who's like, oh, I don't like Alabama because of style of play. But like, I do think Alabama's going to have a cold shooting night. And to me, like, if they play teams that are uncomfortable against that style, they can survive a cold shooting night. I don't think they would be able to survive a cold shooting night against Arizona with the front court, because I do think Tubelis would find a way to be productive in that game. And to your point, Sweeney, Arizona's 5-1 this season against KenPom top 15 opponents. There's no other team in the country that has a record like that against that type of elite talent. So let's do quick picks from this region, and then we'll move on to the next region. Give me your teams that make a Sweet 16 and then pick it through to the Final Four for me. Let's have you go first, Sweeney.
So I've got Bama. I've got San Diego State. That's because I have Furman taking down Virginia in the first round. Then I have Creighton taking down Baylor in the second round, because the Sweet 16, and then Arizona. Bama, Arizona, and the Elite Eight, and I get Bama off to the Final Four.
Hart?
All right, so I got Bama and San Diego State as well. And then I have Baylor there. I do have Baylor getting by because I'm not going to get rid of my love for Keontae George. And then I got Bama and Zona matching up, and then I got Zona winning that game and going to the Final Four.
Wow. All right, I'm with you, Cart. I have Alabama. I have Furman in my Sweet 16. I'm with you, Sweeney. They beat Virginia. I think they also beat San Diego State. I got Baylor. I got Arizona, although even this second, I'm still thinking about swapping Creighton with Baylor. Either way, Arizona, Bama, Arizona beats Bama and is on to my Final Four.